Now we can move on to the Odyssey and Universal and Christopher Nolan and influencers. Basically, what's happened is that Universal has decided not to hold word of mouth screenings for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, which means no influencers, no fan bloggers, no pre release social media flood. The world premiere is set to be in London on July 6th, and then the critics screenings will happen, and then it'll open fully to everybody on July 17th. How word of mouth screenings work is that studios will invite influencers 2 to 3 weeks before the release. They post glowing reactions. It manufactures a groundswell ahead of opening weekend. The key word here is manufacturers, right? I think one of the reasons why this is happening is because Universal has recently experienced the downside, which is that for Spielberg's Disclosure Day, there was a particularly viral influencer quote that said it's Spielberg's best film in 20 years. And then when people went to actually go see the movie and realized that it's actually not one of his best films, professional critics panned it and they would use it in their own reviews. And so it ended up becoming the story, and not in a good way. So I think Universal are betting on the fact that they aren't going to need influencers, A, but B, that they don't want to muddy the waters in any way, which is kind of what's starting to happen with this whole like influencer, campaign at movies, which is kind of crazy, right? Because most films these days have influencers, come out and support them in some way. So one of the things I, am wondering is whether this is going to change the future of all, movie premieres going forward, or if there's going to be like a bifurcation of like the, Oscar movies or like the movies that are meant to be really good are not going to use influencers. And then the ones that are meant to be more like fan favorites or, are kind of basically saying we're not a good movie. We need influencers to, market the movie for us. It's also, bringing up, this, I guess, long held feeling from film critics themselves who are basically thrilled, and very publicly that like influencers are being, kept out because they are kind of, I guess bringing down the art of like, film criticism, which is interesting to think about, right? Where it's like, is this part of the film industry that they want to continue to, prop up and like have be, as important as, it has been in the past, or should it be more so, going in the future? And I think that brings up a lot of things for us, like in society, right? Like, Letterboxd has become like a pretty big social platform of its own right. But then you have the opposite where it's like, when a film critic pans a movie, like, is it just like, do you still trust that like film critic, or are we moving to a system where like people only trust specific film critics, but not all of them? Did you hear about this, Leo?
Yes, and I do have thoughts, because it's been
Yeah.
interesting. The only ads I personally have seen for the Odyssey, like, and of course we've all been getting the steady drip of like, oh my gosh, and they're in it,
Hmm.
and they're in it, right? Like
Hmm.
we know that we know everyone who's involved, and we know they're incredibly talented, and so we expect great things. The
Right.
actual ads that I've seen are all the actors telling me to go watch it in IMAX. Literally every type of format. They're just trying to get people into theaters, and they're really showcasing like we invested in our tools. Like, isn't that amazing? You should care about the tools, and then we invested in that, and that should be what's bringing you in. And so, really, it feels very absent anything about the feeling and heart of the story. It seems very much like come here and be impressed at what we did. And this is a film that wants to be seen as a like serious movie for serious people. And I think, from an industry standpoint, I think there's a little bit of sexism here where I think that a lot of influencers are, like the creator economy, people are used to the idea that there are a lot of women and young women who like when picture an influencer, that's what
Hmm.
most people will
Hmm.
go to.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that there's also something sexist about like those are not like serious people. Like we're a movie for serious people, so we're going to do our screenings for serious people, and those are film critics, real ones.
Yeah.
Film critics are like at least like the classic sense, like more than 70% of them are men. And
Mhm.
I do think that we're just engaging in something here that's not being spoken around who do they want the respect of, and where do they think that will take them. So yeah, film critics are thrilled, and I bet they feel really flattered. And I think
Yeah.
that if you feel really flattered, you're going to get better reviews. And so I think this is kind of manipulative and not in a way that is cool. So that's just my take.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but that does make a lot of sense. I guess one of the ways that like I had kind of been seeing it is like the fact that they are withholding these like extra, screenings and like influencers, keeping it a little bit more closed off and making it more exclusive, right? Is automatically just raising the bar. The fact that you are excluding people means that people all of a sudden pay attention a little bit, differently because it's like, oh, well, why isn't everybody being allowed, and
Hmm.
then I think that is a way to appeal to people too. But then I think it also is a way to kind of elevate that. There's this idea that, film critics will like elevate, your film, right?
Hmm.
And if they do give you a good review, that it is kind of like worth seeing a little bit more. The thing that is interesting for me is that usually, films that are like meant to be like Oscar bait. Obviously this is going to be Oscar bait, right? There's already like
Hmm.
an inherent like tone of like it's not going to be like popular enough, right? Like who's going to see it of like the masses, right? But this film already, because it is Christopher Nolan and it is, has all these like superstars in it, right? Like Matt Damon, Robert Pattinson, Tom
Yeah.
Holland,
Yes.
Zendaya, right? Like it's all these like very popular artists that are bringing their own audiences. So I would have assumed that this would be a film that most people would go see or would make the effort to go see. So it didn't need that extra like Oscar baity marketing to be around it. So it is interesting that they went in that, direction. But yeah, I also see it as a way of like, how do we get more attention? Let's do something different, right? They're already,
Hmm.
having the stars come out and, market it in a way that usually doesn't get done for movies, right? The fact that they're pairing it to like IMAX screenings more than, other films that are out there, show that they're thinking about the marketing different. And this is another way. So yeah, maybe it's just being very attention grabby for the sake of being,
Yeah.
attention grabby.
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially since, Christopher Nolan's last release was Oppenheimer, right? And so,
Yeah.
like, that, from my experience, Barbenheimer is what
Right.
drew my awareness of it. It really benefited from this bigger cultural wave than itself. And it, again, attaching itself to like a very different property and not intentionally. Like, I think, influencers took it and ran with it and made it fun and catchy. And I think, this is obviously very different. Like, this feels starkly the opposite direction from a sentiment standpoint, regardless of whether they did influencer screenings for that or not. It's like the way in which they're approaching this marketing is, as you said, very much focused on exclusivity. This stands alone. And I'd be very curious to see how that plays out versus,
Yeah.
again, a very different and I think influencer and like femme influencer
Yeah.
enabled rise to attention from more people than might have otherwise seen it in the case of Oppenheimer.
Yeah, 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 definitely. So, a couple lessons for me is that scarcity is a marketing strategy. Making it more exclusive, you're trying to get them to come out and see the film. I think the fact that Universal recently had that, huge miss with Steven Spielberg's last film made them a little bit more cautious. So, that's something that influencers are going to have to fix on their own because it's like you don't want the entire industry to be headed in that direction. If that's the reputation that you're kind of building up, that like you're basically gonna, give out a free review because you get invited to a movie premiere, then like you're just gonna lose your, entry into, being an influencer in this way. As soon as you start losing trust from like audience members for the job that you're supposed to be doing, which is reviewing a movie in honest and truthful way, then like, maybe it is time for you to lose that privilege, because it is a privilege to be able to go to like movie theaters and like, see this. So, and then on the flip side, for those influencers, why would you lie to your audience about how you feel about a movie? Because then you get them to go see it. And if they don't agree with you, then like they'll start trusting you less overall. So like really, who does it help to lie about this, right?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, across these three stories, this theme of losing trust with audiences
Hmm.
is rampant, and in some cases, we see people going against the or acting in a way that's not in alignment with their community, and that not working out. And I think this is a really
Yeah.
interesting. It is a statement by like Nolan, the Odyssey's team, all of them about who they believe their community is and the trust that they want to build with that community. And they are not aligning themselves with the influencers. They are saying that their community is the film
Right.
critic, is the serious person.
Hmm.
And there is bias that goes into that. They are picking some people, like the people who they are expecting to act and review favorably on their behalf and that they're aligning with is very specific just by being, again, majority men, majority institutional. And so I'll be very curious to see. I mean, I would expect influencers to like any number of influencers to rally around it and kind of like
Hmm.
piggyback on as quickly as possible. So I don't think
Yeah.
they will be alienated. And I do think the bigger message for them, as you said, is um, you know, pay attention to which brands are going to decide like they need
Yeah.
your vote, and be intentional about building your own persona and audience
Hmm.
that is going to bring that brand to work with you. And then, yeah, you might shoot yourself in the foot if you keep acting against your audience's best interest, or some brands are not going to be a good fit for you.